All right, everybody. Here we are for week 16, right, Wayne? Of
16. 4
16.
months straight.
That's
Again, I've talked about commitment and how I've never committed anything in my life this long, other than my wife, of course. But
Well, here we are, week 16. We have our second guest, Rylie Dexter. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is now showing with Mike and Wayne, everybody. I forgot to mention that part, so that'll be in there as well.
maybe we should tell people the title of the show. Maybe.
Yeah, you know what? They should know by this point. I mean, we're 4 months in.
They see the title, they click on it, I'm pretty sure they know.
That's true.
Ta-ta.
So this week, we're going to continue down the path of horror films like we have the last 2 weeks. And we're going to talk about Child's Play as a franchise.
This is the end, friend.
Child's Play is a film that came out in 1988, directed by Tom Holland, created by Don Mancini, who is the creator of the franchise and has been involved in every movie since its inception, with the exception of the remake. And it stars
Tom Holland has aged really well. Wow.
Different Tom Holland.
Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. It's true. He could be a vampire. It's very possible. Stars Brad Dourif as Chucky, which everyone pretty much knows that at this point. Catherine Hicks as the mother. Chris Sarandon as the police officer. Alex Vincent as the little boy. I don't have the cast list in front of me, so that's why I'm not saying their names outright. But it's a great franchise. I want to talk about it because I feel like, in Wayne, we kind of alluded to it last week, it's the redheaded stepchild. Tongue in cheek there, a little bit of pun. Because of the fact that it doesn't get the same respect as Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. And I actually like it better than the Friday the 13th franchise. But yeah, so Rylie, we brought you on because I know you're a fan of the franchise as well. And I just wanted to talk to somebody who kind of understands where I'm coming from. Chucky came out in 1988. It's a possessed doll movie. Some people, like my wife, are like, "Oh, dolls that kill people. That's stupid. I'm not going to watch that." But it was something different. You know, it kind of brought something, a supernatural element to the slasher franchise, I think, that we hadn't seen before. And it was really cool to have that different take on it and not just be another killer like Jason or Michael. And it did something different than Freddy did, obviously, because Freddy did bring the supernatural element as well. But this one kind of went like, let's just have a slasher who puts himself into a doll's body and then kills people. And if you don't like that premise, then probably don't watch this movie. To me, when I first saw it, I loved it right away. Like, it hit on all the notes. The music was fantastic. The voice acting was great from Brad Dourif. He is amazing in this character and pretty much every character he ever does. So Rylie, when it comes to you, what was the first time you experienced Child's Play?
The first time I ever actually sat down and watched the movie was several years ago. It was just playing on TV, and they were playing the first 3 of them, and I loved the first one. I think out of the series, it's probably still the best one because it's very creepy. It really has that element of you don't really know what Chucky is yet, and I like the whole thing of Karen figuring that out. And I think it's to this day very creepy, especially towards the end where he's all melted and he's going after Andy. Fundamentally, it's a really good story about this family who's trying to get away from this thing that's just taken over their life. And I think that strikes a chord with a lot of people. And I also just think it's really fun to see how this series evolved into these very strange comedies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Very
kind
true.
of what today.
I also think it's interesting, too, is that if you look at... Now, I'll leave Friday out of it because it takes place at a campsite. But if you look at Halloween and you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, all the characters live in these big fancy houses, these big fancy neighborhoods, the suburbs. This kind of takes it away. It's in Chicago. They're living in an apartment building, kind of just an ordinary, not really run down, but an ordinary looking apartment building. So it's not flashy. It's not fancy. And it's very gritty, I think, too, for the time. And I just think the way that they handled the kills and stuff, and how the first kill, I think, with the babysitter, with the friend, is probably one of the most memorable kills in the franchise, and it's the very first one that happens. And I think the fact that they were able to do that and do it so well in that first movie really set us up for what was what should have been, and this is why it's like it's a franchise I love, but it's a franchise that has a lot of flaws after the first movie, and I think everybody recognizes that. But they're still fun. Like, even the bad ones are still fun in a way.
Just to chime in really quick, the apartment building that you're talking about is actually a Chicago landmark. The Brewster Apartments on Pine Grove and West Diversey.
Oh, nice.
They're known for its sculptural landmarks. I had when I was in film school, we did a history of Chicago tour of famous Chicago landmarks, and not only because it is a film location for a classic horror film, but it's also known for its architecture and whatnot. So as soon as I saw the building, I'm like, oh my God, that's Chicago. I have been right outside that place. So that's my 2 cents on Chicago landmarks.
Well, and it's cool too to have a movie where it actually takes place in a real part of Chicago, because there's a lot of movies from the 80s that take place in Illinois or Chicago, where we're from, and they're not real. Like, if you follow the Brat Pack, any of those movies, they're from, like, Shermer, Illinois, which never existed. So
Shermer, Illinois.
Shermer, Illinois, yes. Well, to quote Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, yes. But with this movie, it was kind of cool to have that Chicago backdrop to it, and I think it really added to it. And it's just a really good, crazy movie. And like last year when I watched it again, I forgot like all the like different locations and stuff that it went to, and yeah, it's a really just fun movie. And I think if people give it a chance, I think they'll like it, because it's definitely, the first one is definitely, I think, scary and edgy. I know, Wayne, you said you didn't feel as scared watching it now, but...
Well, I have a question for both of you, actually, to follow up on that. Do you think, because this is kind of... Would you say that this film's franchise is kind of a niche for people that play on the fears of people that... or people who have fears of dolls? Do you think that kind of is what it's geared toward? Or like what they had in mind when they created this? Or is it kind of just more of it just kind of plays together type of thing?
Rylie, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, personally, I think that it plays a lot on the fears of kind of, I guess, any parent, where immediately I think they do a great job of endearing you to the Barclays, because Andy is like the cutest child actor in the world, and he's making breakfast for his mom, and you really care about them. So I think that it has to do more with the sense of, you know, this really adult fear of harm coming to a child. And as the series evolves, they kind of lost that. But in the first movie, I think it's definitely present. And fundamentally, I think that's where the fear comes in for me. Like, if I watch this now, I'm not scared of it, but I think I would have been scared if I was in the theater when it first came out and I had no idea what to expect, and Chucky was a totally new concept to me.
I think watching it as a parent now too, Wayne, for me, specifically after, you know, watching it years before, just enjoying it, watching it as a parent is different, because you're right, Rylie, like, it endears you to the family right away, and then as a parent, you put yourself in the mother's shoes, and what would you do to protect your child? Even when she doesn't believe something's happening to him, she's still trying to figure out how to save him, how to protect him, what help he needs, all that kind of stuff. So it relies a lot on that. Now, it is interesting, because we do all know someone, Jeff Catano, his wife is deathly terrified of Chucky. And so there are people out there that see, now this movie wasn't made for her, though, because she won't watch this franchise because of that. And that's due to her, I think, her grandmother.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, like, yeah, there are people out there that I think that type of stuff scares them, but the more, I think Rylie hit it on the head. I'm not even going to add to it. Rylie, you hit it on the head, but that's more what people were going for, or what they were going for, is you want to be able to feel like you're caring for this family, because otherwise it really is, when you break it down, it's a doll running around stabbing people. So,
yeah. The way that Chucky behaves, Brad Dourif is just excellent, because he's so, like, kind of disgusting. He's so slimy. You want to get him away from this kid immediately. And I think that really adds to it. Like, he's not just a killer who's out there to kill. He's a killer, but he's also a corrupting force in the body of this doll that's supposedly very innocent. And I really love the design of the Chucky doll. I just want to mention that, because I totally buy it as a doll that would have been for sale in the 80s.
For sure, totally.
Like, I kind of take issue with some other, like, scary doll movies, because, like, for example, the Annabelle doll, I don't really buy that that's a doll that somebody didn't make for the purpose of being scary. Like, that looks like a Spirit Halloween prop, but Chucky, I totally buy that. That's like a Cabbage Patch Kid. That's something that would have been for sale.
It totally, and it is something I think that there was a lot of stuff like that back in the day. Cabbage Patch Dolls, Teddy Ruxpin, which I was terrified of as a child. He sat on my toy box for like a day, and my parents had to return him. So I think, especially you brought up Annabelle. What's interesting about Annabelle, the actual Annabelle doll, is just literally like a Raggedy Ann doll. Like it's a regular doll, and then they obviously wanted to make it scarier, I guess. But what were you gonna say, Wayne?
I wanted to touch on the animatronics in this. It's the late '80s, so technology is kind of. Mm-hmm. Just the work that went into making it look realistic with just the eye movement and, just the movements. Well, you can tell, obviously, when it's a stunt double versus when it's an animatronic doll.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I think that, I guess I should have done a little bit more research, but I can't really think of another movie from this time that went in this direction with, that used the animatronics to instill fear. I mean, the Terminator comes to mind, but a lot of that's stop motion.
Yeah.
So, as far as stuff like this goes, can you guys think of anything else that relates or used like animatronics to instill fear in a movie like this, or just in general?
I'm trying to think.
Five Nights at Freddy's now is popular, but nothing during the time.
Yeah, well, the Banana Splits movie recently, that's another one. And then they have another one, of course, because Nick Cage has to get involved in everything. Called Wally's World or Willy's World or something like that, where the animatronics come to life. So it's one of those things that's been popular now, but yeah, back then, I mean, trying to think, there were definitely other movies that did it. There's Dolls came out. Puppet Master was another one. A lot of those did use stop motion, though. So I think Child's Play did definitely spawn the killer doll killer, which is, great, I guess, if you like those type of movies. I've seen Dolls. I've seen Puppet Master. Dolls is really good. Puppet Master is good, but it's a really, trashy B movie from Full Moon. So, if you can get into those type of movies. Again, Puppet Master, similar to Child's Play, spawned a crap load of sequels, and most of them are not good. But with Child's Play, I think you, at least as we go into Child's Play 2 here, you did get some of the character arc that we had in the first movie. I mean, Andy Barclay is back. We get a different director, though. It's John LaFia. And Don Mancini wrote this one as well. He's, like I said, he's the kind of the heart of the franchise, and has kept it going all the way to this day, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But Rylie, I'll let you start off with the plot of this one, since you just finished watching it. I'm going to reread here a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this one takes place a couple years after the first movie, and Andy is now going into the foster care system because Karen has been deemed unfit as a mother, and she's been institutionalized because she's been sharing this story of Chucky the killer doll coming to life, and nobody believes them. And I do really like this entry. I kind of miss Karen, and I'm a little sad that she never really appears again. We do get little glimpses of her relationship with Andy later on. Mm-hmm. So Andy moves in with this family. There's the dad, Phil, who's kind of a jerk. And
yes.
I don't remember the mom's name. I'm not sure I wrote it
down. Joanne,
one of my posts is just Phil is a dick.
Yeah, Joanne is the mom, and then obviously the main new addition is Kyle, played by Christina Lees.
And I really like Kyle's kind of big sister relationship with Andy. I thought that was really cute. This movie, it did introduce everybody to Kyle, which she's become one of the, I would say, 90s final girls, I guess, since it really was in 1990 this came out. And she's kind of enjoyed, I think, a long history as being very popular in this franchise, just because, again, as we'll talk later, as the other movies came out, there wasn't a lot to talk about in some of them. This one, though, was really good. I liked how they kept the story going. The whole foster care thing, I thought, because it's obviously very, it obviously happened because the actress didn't want to return. I'm sure that's why they went in this direction. They usually don't do something like that, unless there's a reason behind it. But it still works. It still works as a movie overall. Brad Dourif returns as Chucky, obviously, and he is great. There's some really good kills. Trying to remember
Is the garbage truck scene in this one, or is that the third one?
That's the third one.
That's the third one, okay.
This one has Phil falling down the stairs and breaking his neck. Joanne at the sewing machine. Chucky does something to her. I'm not even sure what he did. I think he just slit her throat. There's the kill in the warehouse with the random guy who works there who gets the eyes put in his eyes.
Yes.
I think is awesome.
That scene is great. I love that scene.
And the teacher in the closet where Chucky jumps out and stabs her with something or other.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy movie. It's a good follow up. Usually, sequels, that's all you're looking for. You're not looking for Godfather Part 2 every time a sequel comes out, especially in the horror universe, because we don't usually get that much. A good horror sequel is very hard to come by.
So here's some questions that I have that may be answered in the later movies. So does Charles Lee Ray maintain his strength even in doll form?
I guess, yeah. I mean,
that's what it would seem, right? Because it's like you're getting overpowered by a 2-foot
doll.
A
2-foot doll.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would assume so.
Right.
It's never really brought up, and now I won't be able to stop thinking about it. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
Well, it's just something to think at. It gives it a little more depth and character. Now, okay, what about? Here's another one. Is this voodoo a type of shaman type magic?
It's voodoo. Okay. Yeah, specifically it's like
they explain that in the first movie. Yeah,
right. Because I remember the voodoo doll type thing. I just didn't know if they explained or went into more detail about what the rules
of the voodoo really kind of change, I think, with the movie depending on how they need it to work. And you'll see is like in the later ones, it was just kind of like, yeah, well, you need to do this. And so they just figured out a way. I don't know how much research went into it. Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know how much research went into it. It was just like, we can have this happen because it's fictional, it's supernatural, and no one really knows how it would work anyway. So it really does, you can do whatever you want when it comes to that.
I immediately thought of Dogma, where Matt Damon's character makes the voodoo doll out of an onion.
Yes,
I don't believe in voodoo. I don't know. I just made a connection with that. Anyway. So carry on.
Yes.
I like that they introduced a bit more of Chucky's personality into this one. I always laugh when he's kind of taking on the role of the other doll that was in the house, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Tommy."
Yeah.
Like
he has to remember to keep that up.
Okay, that's another thing right there. So I did watch part of the second one, the beginning, half hour. Now, you have a child that's had a traumatic experience with a good guy doll. You'd think you might not put him in a room that has another good guy doll. I mean, come on. What kind of foster parents are you?
Yeah.
Well, they forgot it was in there. It was an accident.
Pothole.
Oops. Hey, it happens, You forget that your killer doll was laying around.
Mm-hmm.
So, the one thing, too, is that I like about... this is where Chucky kind of gets more of a character, I think, too.
Yeah.
And that is what has kind of set him next to Freddy Krueger as the other slasher that's funny and tells jokes and stuff like that. This is where we really started to get the feeling that he was turning into that type of character. And then the third one came along.
I hate this movie so much. I feel like I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I don't even know what it's about because I turn it on and then I zone out for an hour and 10 minutes. And then I come back for the scene in the fun house at the end because I think it's really cool. But the rest of the movie, I really hate this movie.
The fact that it ends up at a fun house is just bizarre in the first place because they're at a military camp. And it's just it's the scene with the garbage truck. That scene's cool, and the funhouse stuff is cool. The rest of the movie, it's a mess. They recast Andy Barclay this time around, and I think a lot of people were upset by that because Alex Vincent was still acting. I believe. I don't know unless he bowed out of it. This was just 1 year later too, so that's another thing for people to keep in mind is a lot of times. With good sequels, you spread them out. This was 88. This is the horror movie way. 88, 90, and 91. And that was when it was basically back in the 80s, you had a new Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street every year. So Chucky was they were trying to do that. Jack Bender directed this one. Again, written by Mancini. The actor Justin Whalen, he stepped in to play Andy Barclay in this one. And then you had Brad Dourif return as well. Perry Reeves, who was on Entourage, Wayne. She came in and played Kristen De Silva, which is one of the people at the military camp. Then Chucky gets himself delivered to this military camp, and then things start happening, and people that were making fun of Andy start dying, and starts getting pointed at him. One of the guns is loaded with real ammo, and that person gets shot. It's kind of all over the place. And then it's like, hey, what if they were next to a fairground? And then it ends up at a fairground amusement park, and Chucky dies, and it's just...
I'm sure there are a lot of military schools next to an easily accessible fairground.
Exactly.
They don't need clearance or anything like that.
We gotta blow off steam somehow.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tension in this movie for me, and I think a lot of that is because, like, at the beginning, Chucky, he reveals his identity to this other kid, and throughout the entire movie, the other kid still believes that Chucky is like his buddy. He's his little friend, so he never feels threatened by him.
Yeah.
But our protagonist is still Andy. But Andy is not necessarily affected by a whole lot of the stuff that Chucky is doing, except in that he's trying to stop Chucky. So it's a lot of kind of weirdly indirect conflict with the protagonist and the antagonist, and I think that's a lot of the issue with it.
Yes.
But this movie just doesn't really work for me on any level.
On even entertainment level. It's not... Last year when I watched it, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm watching this again. And it's just... It's not... Even there isn't really like even the gore entertainment or just an entertainment value to a lot of what's happening here. I do feel we did not mention because we were talking about the puppeteers, Wayne. Brock Winkless, at least in these first 3 movies, was the puppeteer for Chucky. So I got to give him some props. He obviously did some good puppet work, making Chucky look like a murderous psychopath. All right, so right from there, we're going to jump to a movie that I think kind of revitalized the franchise a little bit. I enjoyed it when it came out. Sorry, what was that, Rylie? I stepped in.
I said we can thank Scream for this movie.
Yes.
And other movies of the era.
Yes, exactly. And I've been watching quite a few, and if you've been paying attention to the stuff I posted, I've watched a couple like early 2000s and some late 90s slashers, and like being like Scream is one of my favorite movies, so watching these movies now, all these years later, is just like, wow, everyone was really like, hey, did you see Scream? Let's make a movie like that. So, yeah. And that's basically what happened. And that's with Chucky, you get a very meta movie. Comes out in 1998 called Bride of Chucky, directed by Ronnie Yu, who directed Freddy vs. Jason, which we talked about, Wayne, on our previous episode. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Tilly joins the cast as Tiffany. We get to see her in person, and then also as a new doll, Tiffany. She is Chucky's, a.k.a. Charles Lee Ray's former ex-girlfriend, who's been apparently waiting all these years for him to come back, I guess, or because it's been 10 years since the first movie. This one being that it was kind of in that time to Scream, we get a little bit bigger of a cast. So you get John Ritter and Katherine Heigl, the two main characters. He's her uncle, right? Like horrible uncle that's raising her, and he's a cop.
He's a cop, right?
Yeah, he's a cop. He's a douche.
I do actually believe I saw this at some point.
Well, and this is more like a comedy horror, Wayne. This one wasn't very scary. It was just...
Doesn't Jennifer Tilly's character have to sew Chucky back together?
Yeah.
Yes. That's why he looks all messed up, yeah. I do, though, and okay, we'll talk... You know what? I don't want to get ahead, because there are some things I like about the newer ones that they did that they actually took from these movies, which...
I just really want to talk about how much I love John Ritter and how his death was absolutely fantastic in this film.
Oh, it is. It is. I thought you were going to talk about his real death, and then you said the word fantastic. I was like, Wayne! That's so mean.
I'm scarred to this day, sir.
Yeah, I know, too. I remember the day he died. I was a huge John Ritter fan. But this movie kind of just throws a whole new wrench into it, and it makes it like... It's like a horror buddy... comedy road movie where you have the two lovebirds, Katherine Heigl and Nick Stabile, I think that's how you say his name, Jade and Jesse, and they're basically on the run from John Ritter, and little do they know, also Chucky, when they finally realize that a killer doll is on the loose. It starts with Tiffany, though, trying to bring Chucky back to life. and then her being displeased with him, and then he kills her, and then puts her in the soul of that doll, which becomes Tiffany, and has become almost as famous as Chucky to this point, I think, in the fandom of Chucky, which is why she's been brought back in the more recent iterations. And this movie's just a lot of fun. It really is. It's not scary, but it really is a joyful film, I think, for horror fans to just kind of get, instead of like trying to walk the line of, is Chucky scary or funny? They just said he's funny. And I think they gave us horror fans enough gore to overlap the fact that it's not very scary. And I enjoy this film. So Riley, what are your thoughts about this film?
Yeah, it's so much like homage to other movies. I really enjoy the opening where it's like the cop going in to find the remains of Chucky. For Tiffany, we find out, and there's just horror props everywhere. You see like Freddy Krueger's claws and stuff like that just strewn around there. So you know that this is kind of a horror movie that's a love note to horror movies. Mm-hmm. I love Jennifer Tilly. I think she's awesome.
National treasure.
In all of the other movies. There's some funny moments, and unfortunately, I think the downside of this movie is that it gets really slow in the middle.
A little bit,
the couples that are like the young couple, I don't think you're necessarily supposed to care about them. I don't care about them, and I find them to be kind of tedious, like when they're accusing each other. But other than that, I really like this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a perfect Halloween movie.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's and I think it hit a note when it came out, which was nice for people to be excited about a new Chucky movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so going on from that one, we unfortunately come to, and it does some things good, but we come to Seed of Chucky.
I have a soft spot for this movie. I think it's very weirdly enjoyable.
It's so, like, just strange and like a weird, I mean, it still falls in the same like meta horror, like it's still very self-aware of what it's doing. Mm-hmm. But we meet so you get Jennifer Tilly's back and Brad Dourif is back. We get new characters played by Redman the rapper, Hannah Spirit, John Waters, and then Billy Boyd joins the cast, Lord of the Rings cast member. He plays Glenn or Glenda.
Glenn and Glenda.
Glenn and Glenda, actually, yeah. Glenn and Glenda. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting in how they explain how the baby came about. Like, so like all the mechanics of everything are just so strange. Jennifer Tilly plays herself in this one, which is another kind of very meta thing. She's herself, and she's also Tiffany.
And Tiffany is a big Jennifer Tilly fan, of course.
Exactly. Oh my god, I love her work. And they're like talking about making a movie, right? Isn't that like the premise? They're at this house. Redman wants to make a movie with her.
Jennifer Tilly is starring, I think, as Tiffany in the movie that they're making about the Chucky doll murders.
So very Scream 2.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
And then Jennifer Tilly is also trying to get this role with Redman as the director. She wants to play the Virgin Mary. So to play the Virgin Mary, she has to seduce Redman. And Chucky and Tiffany decide that they're going to take Jennifer Tilly and Redman's bodies, and now they need a body for their child, so they decide to try to impregnate Jennifer Tilly with Chucky's sperm, which is very uncomfortable and weird. I feel like the presence of John Waters makes this movie more acceptable, because the fact that he's there makes you kind of say, oh, okay, it's supposed to be trash, it's fine. Yeah. Like, it's supposed to be tasteless, it's okay.
He does make everything supposed to be that very trashy, yes. Mm-hmm. It's the mustache, mainly.
Oh, yeah.
It also has Jason Flemyng, who's a British actor that people may know from the movies like Snatch and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He plays himself and Santa Claus at one point. But Hannah Spirit, I remember rewatching this movie, and I'm like, oh, so she's like the final girl. And there's spoilers, everybody. She dies relatively quickly, I think, where you're like, oh, I guess that she's not going to make it to the end. And then you're just kind of wondering, like, what's going to happen. Because usually in those type of movies, even like in Bride of Chucky, they didn't get rid of the final girl. Katherine Heigl is basically that role. And in this movie, they kind of just did away with it. They wanted to let you know right off the bat that that's not this type of slasher film, and we're going to kind of go very different with it. And the introduction of Glenn and Glenda was fantastic, I think. It's just the movie as a whole is just so weird and so bizarre that it doesn't totally like make a lot of sense most of the time. And but it is definitely better than Child's Play 3, so I will give it that.
It's a lot more enjoyable.
Yes, and it used to be, I think, considered worse overall. Like, most people consider this the worst of the franchise, and I guess Mancini in an interview was always kind of boggled by that. He's like, I kind of like that movie, which, you know, it's his baby. Obviously, he's gonna have a little more something to say about it, I think.
His baby, pun intended.
Yes, yes. All right, so that was 2004. So then we go 9 years not hearing anything about Chucky, and then we come to a movie that I consider one of my favorite Chucky movies, and that's Curse of Chucky. Mm-hmm. And Curse of Chucky came out in 2013, and it was basically like a VOD, maybe limited theatrical release, so it was like, what is this movie going to be? And I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's very much a back-to-basics Chucky movie, I think.
Yeah, it was a necessary step for the franchise for sure, because they kind of needed to get back to the horror roots after things went totally off the rails.
Yes. And they do such a good job of like making it its own movie, but then along the way things start to happen that you also realize it's not a new story, it's still part of the same franchise. And not that you didn't know that going in, but just the little connections that they make. And Wayne, I know you haven't seen it, but like there's parts where like Chucky looks like Chucky again from the first movie, and you're like, well, how is this possible? He's like messed up. Well, as the movie goes on and they start attacking him, they start pulling pieces of flesh away, and you start to see the stitches and stuff from Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, which I thought was really cool. And it really,
that's a touch.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, and they bring back Alex Vincent in a cameo at the very end of the movie. We get Fiona Dourif, who's the daughter of Brad Dourif, is now the main character. She's the final girl.
So cute.
It is. It's such a cool like toss to her that she, you know, is taking over for her father, kind of, and even more so in Cult. So she's in a wheelchair. They kind of handle this. This actually, to me, makes it easier to take down Child's Play 2, because they actually go a very similar route where, like, the end of the movie, again, spoilers, so if you haven't watched it or whatever, Wayne, I know you don't care. So at the end of the movie, she saves the day, obviously, in her wheelchair. She saves her niece's life. But it's similar to the first movie, or the end of the first movie, as they say in the beginning of the second movie, that they think she's crazy. There's no way a doll did this. She must have killed all these people somehow, even though she's in a freaking wheelchair. But sure. And so they basically like throw her in a crazy place. The daughter goes to live with someone else, which makes for a very dark movie in the Cult of Chucky coming up here. But
yeah.
It really does. I was like, holy crap, I can't believe they went in that direction.
Is that one thing that you guys would say that you would have liked to have seen more of, the psychological or mental health aspect of it? It's like, so you're telling me that a doll came to life and killed all these people?
I think...
I know in the first one, first one into the second one, the cops denied, or there was a cover-up and whatnot. And
yeah.
It all fell on the mother, who's obviously crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think these next two, actually, Curse and Cult, do a good job of showing how we do, just like when someone says something that just sounds too crazy to be true, we just throw them in a mental institution, which is usually what happens, and it's happened for years. And it handles it, and we'll get to it in a minute in Cult, but it handles it a lot more in Cult. In Curse, though, like, I really, the kills were really good. The eye bouncing down the stairs of the oh my god, that was so cool. There was just a lot of really cool scenes. Oh, and the poisoning of the preacher, and then he goes driving.
Like my only problem with that scene is that I feel like they're eating that chili for like 6 hours. It goes on for so long.
It is really long. I think it's to make you feel uncomfortable, at least to me, because I have a bunch of pet peeves when it comes to movies, and which is weird because I watch a lot of movies. Eating is one of them. I hate watching people eat food close
and it
up.
looks so gross.
Like it does, and they do that. I think it's just to make you feel uncomfortable and like something's gonna happen, and it's like chili, right? So, which I hate chili, so it's like really gross.
Vegan chili.
Yeah, it's extra gross to me, and I'm just like, oh my god. And but then that scene though that comes afterwards with the car crash, they don't even really show you everything, but they show you the aftermath of it, and it's really just crazy.
I love when they pull away the debris and his head just falls on the ground.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I need to go back to the eating in movies thing. Does the sound of people chewing bother you?
It's, you know what? A lot of it is the close up of the mouths.
Okay,
it's not
the
so much.
sound of people eating drives me up the wall. Just the chewing and just like people that don't close their mouth all the way.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one of my my triggers, I guess. So
Sopranos was hard to watch then, huh? All they do is eat in that show.
Well.
All right, so
I wanted to ask, how do you feel about the sort of backstory that they added for Charles Lee Ray? Because for me, that's my biggest problem with this movie.
It requires, I think, a lot on us to just kind of be like, oh, okay, well, like, I guess that's the thing. Like,
yeah, to me it feels out of character, and I think that it's kind of a missed opportunity that we didn't find out at the end that this was maybe Mike Norris's family from the first film, because that's a loose end that they could have explored. I don't really buy this backstory for Charles Lee Ray, and that's my big problem with this movie. But other than that, I generally like it.
I think what they were going for, and maybe it's just because they didn't do it, we didn't really get to know him outside of him being Chucky until now. And I think what they were going for is that every time there's a serial killer, what's the question to people? Oh my god, never that person. I would never suspect. So to put him in this place where he was just like at a party and it was normal and he was like this girl, and obviously he more than like he like kidnapped her, but but like really I think that's what they were going for, was they were trying to make it seem like one of those stories of like, this is a serial killer who walked around in everyday life and no one knew who he was really. And I don't know whether, like I said, like you said, it really didn't work that well. It was probably kind of shoehorned in there a little bit. And really what's interesting is it kind of like they don't talk about it in Cult at all. So it really isn't like, it wasn't really needed, I guess. But in order to tie that family into it, but like you said, they could have made it someone else's family that was tied to the first movie.
It's this thing of like him being a killer who is like obsessed with families, but in the past two movies we've seen it's kind of because he hates families.
Because he hates everybody. Yeah.
Like, well, I want to have a family, and it's like, aw, but not really, because this doesn't really make sense for the character. But I digress.
Yes, you're right, because he was just a killer. Like, he just murdered people. There wasn't like, it didn't seem like there was a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, we got to give him a reason. But so then we get to Cult, which came out a couple years later, and I should mention too that these last two were directed by Don Mancini. He also directed Seed of Chucky, which was his first directed movie. So he continued that with the next two in the franchise. And Cult of Chucky starts off in the mental institution. We find out what happened to Fiona Dorff's character.
Yep.
They threw her in a mental institution. The daughter was sent away. We find out why and what happened to her, and it's pretty kind of shocking. That's what I was talking about in the, like, you don't expect him to be like, yeah, we tried to make her put part of my soul in her body and it didn't work and she's dead. And you're like, what? Like, what happened? Yeah. It's just kind of a crazy thing to kind of start off with, because you think that maybe the kid's going to be part of, like Alex Vincent's character, Andy Barclay, was part of the original franchise. You would expect another kid maybe to be kind of front and center. And they just got rid of that immediately. You're like, what the hell?
The first that a child has died in this franchise, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Well, you could count maybe some of the military kids, but they're more like teenagers, so it's not really like a child, I guess.
Teenagers don't count. They get killed in horror movies.
Yeah, they do. They do. That's why they're there. That's why they're in horror films, is to die.
Yeah.
So this one came out in 2017. It actually, when I moved here to Florida, I went and I came down a month early. So I brought a TV, my PS4, which I used for my Blu-ray player, and Cult of Chucky just came out, so I'm like, how am I going to see this? I can't rent it. So I went to when you could still get DVDs in stores, people, which they still have in like Walmart and Target. I ran to Best Buy, picked up Cult of Chucky on Blu-ray, and watched it that night because I love Curse so much. I was excited to see this movie, and I liked it. I didn't love it. It wasn't like I still think Curse is better, but I like this one. I thought this was a nice mixture of the first movie of Child's Play 1, Curse, and Bride of Chucky, where like it kind of goes off the walls a little crazy. Wayne, just so you're familiar, have you seen Cult of Chucky? I'm assuming no.
I have not.
So this one is Chucky wants to put himself in like people and other dolls. Like there's several Chucky dolls in this one that his soul is in. So they found a way to take parts of his soul and throw them into dolls. Now they want to take parts of his soul, which they've talked about for many movies, putting him in humans. This is the first time that they actually succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I thought was very interesting and very cool. Tiffany is back, as it seems that because at the end of Siege, she took over Jennifer Tilly's body, or was she...
Yeah, at the end of Siege, she becomes Jennifer Tilly.
Okay.
And they move to Mexico or something like that.
Yeah.
They get out of town.
So that leads to this. So she comes in at the very end of this. And rumor has it, because there is the new sci-fi series, which will be out next year, sometime in 2021, created by Don Mancini, with the original cast and all the original characters and stuff. So that I'm really looking forward to. This movie... It really, lots of good kills in this one because you're inside a mental hospital, so there's lots of medical equipment and stuff, and just really good gore. Brad Dourif is kind of on his top of his game here because he's like 3 or 4 different Chuckies at once, which is really interesting to see how that plays out. Fiona Dourif is great. She at one point though, and this is again spoiler, the end of the movie, Chucky takes over her body, and it is amazing to see Fiona Dourif kind of do her own take on the Chucky voice, which was created and originated by her father, obviously.
Yeah, it's really fun. I think each movie in the franchise kind of stretches the rules as to what is possible for Chucky to do, and it's always looking at Voodoo for Dummies or going on voodoofordummies.com, which is kind of funny. And this one really stretches those to the extreme. Like now it doesn't matter how long he's been in a body. It doesn't matter like whatever. He can just kind of body hop, which is fun. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities. I almost wonder if it opens up too many possibilities because now you have a character who can just kind of do whatever he wants.
Yes, yes.
I think it's fun. I like this movie.
Yes, I do too. And Wayne, to touch back on the bonus scene at the end of the first movie, not only do we get to see Andy Barclay again, but he's actually torturing the original Chucky doll, like, in his house, which is very interesting. So then at the end of this movie, Andy is thrown into the mental institution. Fiona's character is now Chucky, and she walks out with Jennifer Tilly. And then we get the other bonus scene, though, which is we get Kyle back from the second movie. And she is, like, there, so if anything happens to Andy, she's supposed to jump in and, like, take over. So we'll see. Hopefully, I'm hoping that they take this story and they basically just run right into the TV show with it, and then it kind of picks up where Cult left off. They may not do that just because they want to reintroduce people, and because it's a TV show, some people may not be familiar with the franchise, but I'm hoping they do that.
I was really interested to see that it's starting in 2021. It's going to be a TV series.
Yeah.
Where is it going to be? Where are you?
On the Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay, well that's a perfect place for it. So.
Yep, it'll be Sci-Fi, and I think it's going to be like Hulu or like it's associated with one of the I believe major networks. It'll be on some streaming platform, but it'll be on live TV on Sci-Fi. What were you going to say, Rylie?
I just like, Wayne, you opened this with, "This is the end, friend." In this one, Andy, when he's killing one of the Chucky dolls, he says, "This is the end, fucker," and he kills him. And I think that's a great evolution.
It's a nice callback and a really great scene, too. All right, so we're going to get in, well, we don't want to touch on it a lot, but we'll get into the remake. You know, Child's Play, the remake, when it was coming out, everyone was upset. Child's Play fans were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this to us." Don Mancini had nothing to do with it, so he wasn't supporting it, which I think
that's sad.
Yeah, it is, because And I get, being upset about it, and you had the other actors, Jennifer Tilly, coming out and talking about it. It was directed by Lars Klevberg and stars Gabriel Bateman. He's basically he's Alex, basically. Or not Alex, sorry, Andy. Aubrey Plaza is the mother.
His evil twin, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Aubrey Plaza is the mother. Brian Tyree Henry is a police officer, and Mark Hamill is the voice of the new Chucky.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think he's very underutilized.
Yes, I agree. I think I like this movie a lot. I went and saw it in the theaters when you could still do that sort of thing, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's a lot of fun. It's very gory. It's very creative, and I think Mark Hamill is very good. They could have used him more. It is kind of weird that it's like a robot, so there's not a lot of character there per se.
Yeah.
And I think he does that role perfectly, but he's so good with doing all his other voiceover work.
Right.
It would have been nice if it wasn't
like a jokery laugh or something.
Yeah, it would have been nice if it was more of a possessed doll than that's the only qualm I would have about the robot part of it, is that it didn't allow Chucky to have much of a character. But that being said, I still thought it was a very fun remake, and Aubrey Plaza was great as the mom. The kid was great. The group of kids was great when they like all band together. It almost reminded me of like a Monster Squad or Lost Boys type movie where they come together and try to take out the bad guy. Brian Tyree Henry as the cop I thought was really good, and like crazy that he makes it through this movie because of what had the slice across the throat. But and I was hoping we were going to get a sequel from this. I know they're still talking about it. It did all right. It didn't do terrible. The critics pretty much liked it overall. It wasn't like, it didn't make like Halloween money when that came out. That made a lot of money. So hopefully maybe someday we'll get another sequel to it. But I thought it was really well done. Riley, what was your thoughts on this one?
I like this movie. The way I feel about this is kind of the way I feel about a lot of remakes lately. I think that the fact that it's a Child's Play movie is kind of its biggest downfall, because it kind of has to play into like what we expect out of a Child's Play movie, despite being a very, very different concept. Like, if this wasn't branded as Child's Play, the doll didn't look like Chucky, anything like that, I wouldn't think of this as a Child's Play remake. So I think that's kind of a shame, and it's sort of a trade-off because, the Child's Play brand is recognizable, so people are going to go to the movies to see that. They might make more money initially, but it doesn't have the same cultural staying power as it might if it was an original concept.
Mm-hmm.
If I go on Spirit Halloween, I checked this. If you type in Child's Play or Chucky, the costume results you get are still going to be from the original. They're the good guy dolls. They're not the buddy dolls. And so I think that's kind of a shame, but it's sort of the nature of how things are right now, where people really want to make as much money as possible. So they're doing these sort of rebrands of classic characters. But as a movie, I enjoyed it. When I first heard about it was being like Child's Play with a technology twist, I was like, oh, are they going to give him an iPhone? No, he is an iPhone.
Essentially, yeah.
And it feels kind of like a long Black Mirror episode in a way, but I didn't mind that. I think it's kind of a fun sci-fi horror story. So, yeah, I like it. Yeah,
it is definitely different. The Buddy does not look great, I would say. Chucky, obviously, is a lot better looking doll. There are definitely, like I said, some elements of it that... Also, the other thing I was going to mention, the name, where he's Buddy, but then all of a sudden at one point he's just like, you can call me Chucky. And it's like, but why? Why am I calling you Chucky? Oh, wait, because it's called Child's Play.
Franchise.
Exactly. So that part I thought was kind of strange. And it's got a really dark opening, too, where there's a guy working in a factory, like, in China, and he, like, loses his mind. He gets angry, so he changes all the settings on the robot doll, puts it in a box, sends it off, and then murders himself. So it's really just like, it was like, wait, what? And that's how that Chucky. So then Aubrey Plaza, the same idea in the first movie. She needs to get her son a present. She can't get it. This one, someone returns, and then she ends up like, well, can I take this doll? And it ends up being the murder doll. And
so there's no like Charles Lee Ray or
no,
anything?
They got rid of all that. They do it really, like Riley hit it on the head. It really is like a Black Mirror episode. It's basically technology is taking over us so much that.
So it's Skynet.
basically. And it's
They
not
just
like
have an evil corporation that's like
yeah.
a
X-Files did an episode like this on their rerun when they did their newer seasons. It's very popular, obviously, and it works for this movie. But like again, calling it Child's Play, I think people definitely were disappointed in the fact that it was called that, because a lot of people have the same feeling you did, right? They're like, yeah, it was a really good movie. They just should have called it something else. It should have been called like Buddy or Killer Doll or something, something whatever.
3 billion good guy dolls died on Judgment Day.
Like I was saying how I love the design of the Chucky doll as a doll from the 80s. I think it's really good because it's believable as a doll, but it's also uncanny and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And the need to adhere to the Chucky doll design is kind of a downfall, because I don't really buy that this is the hip new toy. It's kind of weird.
It's really bizarre. No one would buy that for their child.
Yeah.
And however, though, the one high mark I will give this movie for sure, like I said, I really enjoyed it, is the gore. The gore factor is off the charts in this movie. I was laughing hysterically, and I even heard somebody be like, "Why are people laughing?" I'm like, because I'm a little demented. But yeah, it's that much fun, at least to me. Other people, I think, were a little disappointed, but like the gore stuff and that stuff, I think really hits the mark. And so if you're a fan of gory movies, check it out. It's on Amazon Prime and Hulu right now, I believe. Yeah,
it's on Prime for sure. That's where I watched it.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move into our next segment, which I'm sure everybody is waiting for. It's the review of the week. And this week, that should tell everybody what we're in for. Rylie, let me just give you a little background. So we've reviewed, I think, because Wayne didn't do one of the episodes with me, so we've done 14 movies or TV shows, because we reviewed Cobra Kai as well. We've only not liked one thing that we've done. So this will be the second thing I have a feeling we're also not going to care about. We reviewed the brand new Adam Sandler movie, Hubie Halloween.
Joy.
I can tell right now that, Rylie, you are a huge Adam Sandler.
Oh, love the guy, for sure. It's so funny.
That's sarcasm, people, if you can't tell.
See, I'm going to jump in right now. Adam Sandler, I don't know what the whole deal is, or if it's all just about a cash grab now these days, but, 20 years ago, man, he could really make me laugh. Mm-hmm. And now, I laughed a little bit at Grown Ups. What was that, 2012 maybe?
2009.
9?
It was
okay.
a long time ago.
Grown Ups 2 is...
Yeah, that one was more recent, yeah.
And, honestly, that was more because of everybody else, not him.
No, yeah.
David Spade is the one that really made me laugh in that movie. Yeah. So I don't understand what's happened.
Well, okay. So let's we'll talk about that for sure. But let's just go run down the basics here. Hubie Halloween, directed by Stephen Brill, produced by Adam Sandler and Alan Covert, starring Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Julie Bowen, Ray Liotta, Rob Schneider, June Squibb, Kenan Thompson, Shaquille O'Neal, Steve Buscemi, and Maya Rudolph. It revolves around a person that everybody hates called Hubie Dubois. They all make fun of him because he sounds like an idiot. Very typical to Adam Sandler movies if you've seen Waterboy. Little Nicky.
This is basically the Waterboy.
Yeah, Little Nicky is another one that people hated the sound of his voice in that movie, and everyone made fun of him because he looked weird. So everyone makes fun of him, but weird stuff starts to happen, and it seems something supernatural is at foot, which, let me just tell you, fans, it's not. So if you're looking for something like that, don't watch it. This isn't going to be an endorsement to watch it anyway, so, So, that's the plot, basically. Everyone hates Hubie, they make fun of him, and then something weird's happening, and Hubie's trying to insert himself into everything. And all the characters are assholes. Every single one of them, except for, what's her name?
Julie Bowen.
Julie Bowen. She thinks he's really nice.
Violet Valentine, I think?
Violet Valentine, which is now the, I think, fourth movie I've seen. I saw this somewhere. There's an article. The fourth movie that they've done the double V in Adam Sandler movies. Veronica Vaughn. Happy Gilmore, Julie Bowen's character, has 2 V's for a name. And then also Victoria Valancourt from Waterboy.
Oh, Vicky Valancourt.
Vicky Valancourt. So that's like a thing for them. I don't know why that's a thing. Maybe his mom's name starts with a V. I have no idea. Really weird. But that's a thing. So then we also get some callbacks to other better movies. If you're an Adam Sandler fan. So those things I thought were okay. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But the movie as a whole, like, we get... And people will notice I'm not talking about the plot very much because there really isn't one.
Yeah.
It's like Hubie shows up, they make fun of him, they throw stuff at him. Every time he rides his bicycle, there's stuff flying at him. Obviously, most of it was added probably in CG. So when you review an Adam Sandler movie, when it's a basic Adam Sandler movie, I'm not talking Uncut Gems, I'm not talking Rain Over Me and Punch Drunk Love. Like, those are different films. Those aren't Adam Sandler movies. The Meyerowitz Chronicles, which is on Netflix, highly recommend. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. The Adam Sandler movie, though, is a different rating system than a regular movie. And it has to be, because they're mostly, if you just judge them as regular movies, they're mostly not very good. He started out, and Wayne and I were from the generation that kind of gave life to Adam Sandler, so I apologize, Rylie, on our behalf.
It's our fault. It really is.
It really is our fault that he's got a huge Netflix deal.
I don't.
It's a pretty good impression. What'd you say, Rylie? Sorry, we kind of talked.
I said I don't accept your apology.
Sorry.
I'm still waiting for Adam Sandler to kind of do his Robin Williams thing where he does a really serious role, and he's really good in it.
He has.
I'm just really...
He has.
I guess accepting the fact that I guess it's not coming.
I will tell you right now, they screwed him over on Uncut Gems, and it's probably because of movies like this.
Yeah.
They're probably like, we're not nominating that guy, and he should have been, because Uncut Gems, he was fantastic. He was great in that movie. He was kind of annoying, but I
think I was just more annoyed with the character that he portrayed.
Yeah, he's not a likable character. I mean, that's the whole point of that movie, is he's kind of an asshole and an annoying douchebag. But he played the part really well. Maybe there's a reason for that.
I was going to say, well, shoe fits.
You get a lot of Sandler people walking through this movie. You get Colin Quinn and Rob Schneider. No Spade this time. Buscemi, who's like... At this point, it's like, just stop, Steve. Like, I know you're good friends with him, but go do something else.
Every time I see Kevin James, I just really long and miss Chris Farley even more than I already do.
Yeah. See,
Kevin
it's not our
James
fault that Chris Farley died
comedian.
and ruined everything, okay?
Yeah, he's a funny comedian, but just Chris Farley would have done it so much better.
I'm not a huge Kevin James fan.
Pining for the man.
I will say the one bright spot, there aren't any, I wouldn't even call it a bright spot. The one thing I take solace out of this is that Maya Rudolph is a national treasure. And she needs to stop being in these movies, because she was the only time I really ever giggled was stuff that she said, and it was like at the end and about her husband Tim Meadows, because of course he's another SNL alum, Saturday Night or Adam Sandler guy.
Literally nothing since.
Basically, just shows up in these movies, which is fine if you can make a career out of that. I have no problem with it.
I just really wish I liked Tim Meadows a lot, and I really wish he would have gone on to do more things.
Yeah, no, for sure. There were a lot of talented people from those days that just don't do much. Instead, we get Rob Schneider all the time. At least Rob Schneider wasn't playing in an insensitive racial stereotype in this movie.
Yeah.
He was just a white guy. Whoa! Like, hey, what an idea!
It could have been.
Yeah. So, and he is Asian, but they never really have him play Asian characters. They always have him play Mexican characters or any sort of Hispanic character, like Ridiculous Six, which is easily the worst movie I've ever seen, or one of. But this movie right here, like, I wanted to like it because I saw what they were going for. And it's movies I liked as a kid, like Ernest Scared Stupid. Mm-hmm. They were going for a sweet Halloween film, but there's so much, like, hate thrown at him throughout the whole movie that it loses that, like, sweet factor that they were going for, I think. Like, they basically pour it all into Julie Bowen's character. Like, she's really the sweetheart of the movie, not Hubie. And it just kind of gets lost in all that. I don't know. It was a mess of a movie. The characters are all over the place. I don't know. Rylie, what did you think? I know you don't normally watch these movies, so I'm interested to get your perspective.
Well, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would hate it, but I didn't like it. There were a couple of times when I did laugh, and it was at the beginning when they would tell a joke the first time. My big problem was that then they would tell it a second time and a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time and a sixth time. Like, when the kids were throwing stuff at him, yes. It was like, okay, but then somebody threw a weapon, and I thought that was really funny. But then in every single scene afterwards, they're throwing weapons at him.
or air conditioners or
It's funny.
yeah, it was, and you were right, like, there was moments in the beginning where I was laughing, and I'm like, oh, like, this is actually pretty funny, but then I noticed, and I paid attention to this, and that's probably a bad thing when you're watching a movie, I started noticing that I wasn't laughing as much. I'm like, oh, well, this isn't as funny anymore. Like, I don't know why, it just, Wayne, you look like you want to say something?
I wanted this to be something I could watch with Dawson, like a Hocus Pocus type movie where it's going to be a fun Halloween movie that we can watch every year, and yeah. I mean, if I have to watch this movie again, I'm not going to be happy about it. I'm going to be...
And so. This is coming from me specifically. Another thing I don't like in movies, which is funny that I like watching a lot of these type of movies, but I guess I just like movies in general. I'm not a big pee joke guy or bodily fluid joke guy. That's not my thing.
That's why I hate Adam Sandler so much.
And like the sheet with the pee stains on it, and then Schneider peeing his pants later. I was like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, you did that 25 years ago in Billy Madison. Do we really need to do it now? Like, it's still a thing?
The sheet was the same sheet that they used, or the same joke that they used in Waterboy. So I guess that's kind of an homage to that.
That's
movie.
true.
And
I missed.
Peeing your pants is cool unless you're Miles Davis, or however the line goes. So
that was from
throwing back to his good movies. Yeah. And honestly, I hate saying that. I hate being critical of the guy, but you're capable of so much more.
And it's obvious in this movie that they weren't trying, because like we just talked about, all the callbacks that they had to their other movies. That's all they were doing. Is they're like, hey, what was funny in The Waterboy? What was funny in Happy Gilmore? What was funny in Billy Madison? And they just kept going back to that, and it just didn't work. And sometimes it does, but this one, it just didn't work. It feels like the ideas have just kind of escaped them. I know the joke has been made because he joked around when that if he didn't win the Oscar, he was going to make the worst movie ever. And people were like, did he hold up to his end of the bargain? Is this what we're getting? And it's
now,
weird. Go ahead.
Sorry, like I'm looking at this, and like I talked about, I was thinking to myself right now, when's the last time, other than Uncut Gems, which was really good, when's the last Sandler movie that I actually enjoyed? I talked about Grown Ups, and I completely forgot about Murder Mystery.
Murder Mystery was fun.
Very good. He was good, in that, not triumphant, but
that stands as
so many misses.
Yeah,
and it's frustrating.
It is frustrating, and that stands as his best Netflix movie. Well, his best Adam Sandler Netflix movie. The Meyerowitz Chronicles, his best Netflix movie. See that movie? Have you seen that, Rylie?
No.
You need to watch it. It's a really good drama about a family starring him and Ben Stiller. Fantastic. And it's the guy that directed Marriage Story.
Okay,
that
cool.
guy. I know who he is. Drawing a blank on his name right now, but it's that guy, and it's a good movie.
I'll check.
Yeah, so that's like his best. But like Murder Mystery was probably his best Adam Sandler movie that he did for Netflix. It's probably helped by Jennifer Aniston because she was really good in that movie. And the supporting cast was good. They actually had it was not very many Adam Sandler people in that movie, which is why it helped. Because you could tell they shot it somewhere else. They didn't bring their friends along this time. Usually he makes a movie to go shoot it in an exotic place. So that's another funny thing about Hubie Halloween. Obviously it was like shot in a small town because it's not a very big, like luscious background or anything. And it sucks too because I like the idea behind it of taking a horror comedy and setting it in Salem, but they totally messed it up. It's like one of those like, we have a great idea and then we're gonna write a terrible script, and that's what they did. And I feel like they've done that. Ridiculous Six was the first Netflix movie he did. It was a Western comedy, and my thought in that movie was like, they sat around a table and they're like, "Do you guys see Blazing Saddles?" Like, yeah, we did. Well, let's do that, but it's an Adam Sandler movie. And then right there, it just went off the rails because it was awful. And this one wasn't as awful as that, but I really didn't end up like when it was over, I was just like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, it did make me miss New England, so thanks for making me sad, Adam Sandler.
Another thing, just tick it on the box.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Adam. But, yeah.
All right, well, so obviously, as you can tell, none of us liked it. Don't watch it, but if you do, you've been warned. All right, so we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about, we're going to move on to Gone But Not Forgotten. Gone But Not Forgotten is where we talk about a celebrity who has passed away, and we talk about their career and their history. Before we do that, Rylie, though, I usually talk about people that we lost this week, so I'm going to go run through that list real quickly. Thomas Jefferson Byrd passed away. He was actually murdered. He is an actor who's in quite a few Spike Lee movies. He was shot dead in Atlanta. Pretty crazy. Rest in peace to him. Kenzo Takada is a fashion designer who died of COVID. Chris Carnell, a stunt person. He was the coal miner in My Bloody Valentine, Rylie. He passed away, unfortunately. He was also a stuntman in movies like American History X, Gone in 60 Seconds, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and many more. Clark Middleton from Blacklist in Twin Peaks and Sin City and Kill Bill and many other movies. He passed away. Singer Johnny Nash, who did I Can See Clearly Now, and Whitey Ford, the famous Yankee. But obviously the big one this week was Eddie Van Halen, passed away from cancer. That was sad. Rest in peace to all those that we lost. But we're gonna
go back to Hubie Halloween real quick, because there was one redeeming thing if you watched to the end, the little homage to Cameron Boyce.
Yes, that was
a very nice, touching tribute.
And they kept it up for quite some time, too. I noticed that. It was probably 30, 40 seconds that they kept it up. That was a nice touch, because he was in Grown Ups, I believe 1 and 2 with them.
Yes.
All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about Peter Lorre today. Rylie, this was your choice, and I know who Peter Lorre is, but I had not seen a bunch of his movies until the last couple days, where I decided to go and watch 4 of them, or 3.5. I'm still in the middle of Maltese Falcon. So to me, Peter Lorre was always that guy. He looked weird, and growing up, he reminded me of Steve Buscemi, and let's be honest, it's because Steve Buscemi looks weird. And the bulging eyes and stuff, this gives me the same feeling. But it's kind of fitting, too, because Peter Lorre, Bela Lugosi, and Boris Karloff, not only were they known as, horror actors, but they were probably the first, character actors that we had. And that fits into someone like Steve Buscemi or Philip Seymour Hoffman, who we talked about recently, Wayne. And so, Peter Lorre, when you look at him, at least I wonder why I look at him and some of the research I did, he was, the first character actor, and the first kind of character actor that transcended other stars. You go look at some of his movies that I watched, the Man Who Knew Too Much, the original from 1934 by Hitchcock, and it's funny because he's in that movie obviously, and he's the villain, but he's not the main character. But if you go look at the poster, who's on the front is Peter Lorre's giant face, because he was the best part of that movie, and that's why that movie was remade with Jimmy Stewart 20 years later by Hitchcock, because he thought it was a mess. Aside from, it was also tonally just a really weird movie. But Peter Lorre was fantastic in that movie. And
he learned his role phonetically in that. He didn't know English yet.
And that's another thing I want to talk about too. Watching the Maltese Falcon, which I haven't finished yet, but also, and then watching The Raven, which I watched last night. The fact that you can't tell that he's from another country in those 2 movies, is really strange to me, especially because German accents are very hard to hide, very hard. So Rylie, since he was your choice, I want you to, why are you such a big fan of Peter Lorre?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about him because I think that with his legacy, people don't necessarily know about Peter Lorre, even though he's had such a big impact on popular culture. People think about the worm from Corpse Bride or Ren from the Ren and Stimpy show. Those are all Peter Lorre impressions, but people don't necessarily associate that with Peter Lorre, even though he's the one that originated that as a character actor. And I think he's a very underrated actor. I think he provides a really cool contrast between, Vincent Price was very big and very hammy and stuff like that, and that's what people remember him for. But Peter Lorre was a lot more understated, and I think he has this sort of charismatic charm that he brings to all of his roles, and I just really love him as an actor. The first movie that I ever saw him in was actually the first black and white movie I ever saw, which was Fritz Lang's M, and it's in German, and he's just excellent in that. He plays a child murderer who is kind of caught by all of these criminals in town because they want to take care of him before the police do, so that they can kill him. And he plays the role in such a sympathetic way, even though the character does really despicable things. And that's kind of what captured the attention of Alfred Hitchcock and stuff. And it was his breakout role, but he kind of regretted it because it solidified his place as being typecast as the slimy villain or the sympathetic villain or the criminal or all of these bad guys, even though he really wasn't he didn't love being typecast in horror movies and stuff like that. And so I think it's kind of sad that he was always known as like the horror guy, even though at times he did branch out from that. But I just think he's a very underrated actor, and I love him, so I wanted to bring some attention to him today.
Well, that's cool, and I respect that. And Peter Lorre, I did watch M. That was the second one I watched, and it's a little slow, but like when he's on screen, it like he is fantastic. That the last scene where they're all surrounding him, all the mobsters and stuff, and they're trying to have like their own court process. Like he is fantastic in that whole scene where he's trying to explain like why he deserves to go to jail or to a mental institution and not be murdered. I did think it was interesting too when the mobsters got together though in the beginning, like we're about halfway through the movie probably, when they decided that they were going to catch him, that it was mainly because the police were causing havoc for everybody and not the fact that he was a child murderer. Like that was like the main, like obviously in that last scene you got the family and the women are there, so they're he deserves to die, he's a horrible person, and he did. But I just thought that it was funny that the mobsters were like, well, yeah, but he's bad for business, like we got to get rid of him. like that was the main reason they wanted him gone, which is that's fine. I just thought that was kind of funny, but he was great. And it was just interesting to see some of the movies that I watched. Like I said, I watched M. I watched The Man Who Knew Too Much, The Raven, and then I'm in the middle of The Maltese Falcon right now. And every time he comes on screen, there's a presence there. And I think that's really important, obviously, as an actor, and especially when he shared the screen with Bogart, which was the first time I saw him, or actually the second time I saw him, because I actually saw Arsenic and Old Lace as maybe like 16, 17. I didn't even know who he was really at that point, so I don't really remember him from that. But that's a really good movie, though. I like that movie. And
he's adorable in Arsenic and Old Lace. That's one of my favorite roles he's in. He's just so cute. Yeah,
it's a good movie. I have to watch it again because I don't remember him as much. I remember more of the main plot and the ladies and stuff. But Casablanca, like he steals a lot of those scenes from Bogart towards the end of that movie, and just him. Like I said, just his screen presence was impressive. Just in, like I said, that was up until this week. Those are the only two movies I saw him in, so that's really all I had to base it on, except for like what you talked about in Corpse Bride and Ren and Stimpy and there's plenty of other iterations. I wish I could remember them all of people trying to imitate his voice.
He's been in a zillion times. Yeah. The creepy lamp and the brave little toaster.
Yeah. There's always. It seemed like growing up there was always a Peter Lorre voice in one of those animated things that I watched. So you could just tell that he had at least that thing going from his voice and his look that people, I think, always remembered. And, yeah, I mean, the other thing I want to talk about, too, is crazy to me just to think, like, we're talking about a guy who passed away before any of us were alive. Like, the fact that he existed, and it was the same with Bogart, because I was talking to my wife, I was like, well, you know what's weird is Humphrey Bogart died when my dad was 2 years old. Like, my parents never even got to really live with Humphrey Bogart as an actor. He was already gone by that point. So, and the fact that these actors existed before us is just still kind of mind-blowing to me, like, in a way to think about it. I never thought about it in that way before. That, like, I was never alive when they were alive. So that was just always kind of a strange thing for me to look at. Death is always very weird for me, so...
Yeah, he died, I think it was in the 60s. He struggled with morphine addiction.
Yes, in 1964, he had a stroke. And he actually had one daughter who died of diabetes issues in 85, I think, as I was doing research.
She was in her 30s. That's really
sad. Yeah, it was, yeah. But, so yeah, he came from, it was just, his story, too, is interesting, because he was born in Hungary, he was born in Hungary, and then went to Germany, of all places, and then a little thing called Adolf Hitler started to happen in 1931. That's when he left, came to America, and like you said, I'm sure other American directors noticed him. Or actually, he went to England first, I believe. He went to England,
he went to Paris, then England, and then to America, and in England is where he made The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yes,
and that was, obviously Hitchcock was, just kind of getting started at that point.
And apparently he faked his way through an interview with Hitchcock by watching his body language and laughing whenever he thought he told a joke, which is just amazing.
That is incredible that he could do that. And the fact, like you said, that he learned English during that movie, you can't tell. I mean, he was fantastic in that movie. And like I said, he's the reason to, if you're going to watch the original, he's the reason to watch it because he was really good. But yeah, it's nice to see someone too that just like again, we talked about before, just had an impact on the business and still to this day does. People still imitate the man because he had that very distinct voice and very distinct look. And like I said, to me, whenever I look at Steve Buscemi, I always think of Peter Lorre because it's just that, and it's not an insult. They just have a very similar look. I don't know what it is, but they just do. It's the bulging eyes, I think. All right, so we're gonna go on to the last segment of what we do here, and that is what we've watched this week. So I will start. I know Rylie, you said you've watched mainly Child's Play this week, so. But if there's anything recent that you want, that obviously this is your first time on the show, so if there's anything that you've seen in the last couple months that you want to talk about, we can do that as well. I will start though with my 31 Days of Halloween. Last week I talked about the first 3 that I watched. Oh, here, you know what? I actually have a list that I started keeping, so it was easier for me to do. So the first 3 were Ready or Not, 12-Hour Shift, and Day of the Dead. I talked about those last week. 12-Hour Shift was The other 2 are classics, in my opinion. Ready or Not's amazing. All right, so this week I watched Vampires vs. the Bronx. This is a movie. It's a Netflix original. It was made and then bought by Netflix. It reminds me a lot of like Monster Squad or Lost Boys. It's a bunch of kids in the Bronx. There's gentrification happening, so they will kind of work what's happening in today, into this horror film. And the people that are trying to gentrify the neighborhood are vampires. And so it's this really cool... Like, just kind of, again, just like a kid horror movie, think Monster Squad, think Lost Boys, Fright Night, something like that. It really fits into that category. And it was a lot of fun. Zoe Saldana is in it for like all 5 seconds, but obviously it was one of those like kind of low produced movies. It was produced by Lorne Michaels from SNL and written and directed by one of the guys that's a writer on his show on SNL. So it had a couple SNL people in it too. Which, always helps when you see friendly faces and people are like, oh, I know that guy. Fun movie. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out. October 5th, I watched Don't Breathe, which to me is a fantastic movie. Riley, I don't know if you've seen that one.
I haven't. I've kind of been avoiding it because I know what the plot twist is.
Oh, man. It is disturbing. I think that's why my wife doesn't like it, because I put it on the other night. She's like, oh, is this the one with the... And she's like, I don't like this movie. I'm like, well, it is disturbing. Very disturbing. But I like this movie a lot. I think Jane Levy is fantastic in this movie as what you would call the final girl of this film. It involves a bunch of people 3 people breaking into a house of a blind guy, and the blind guy is not who you think he is, and it's very, murdery. So watch out. Then I watched The Shed on Shudder. That kind of sucked. Cherry Falls. Have you seen this movie, Riley?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Cherry Falls is a slasher from 2000. It stars Brittany Murphy, Jay Moore, and it has a couple other... There's a Michael Biehn from Terminator and Aliens. It's a movie about this person that's killing all these teenagers, which is what usually happens in these movies. But
generally.
It's only killing, though, the virgins. So it's kind of subverting the normal thing of virgins usually live in these movies. That's not the case in this movie. So I like that little twist to it. It has drawn some criticism over the last 20 years because the killer is someone who dresses up in women's clothing. But there is the plot device is very similar to something like Psycho, where it's like they're responsible for the torture and harm that was brought onto him by his mother, because his mother was a victim of sexual assault, and so he dresses up as her as like the payback to them as he kills them, as he really kills their children. So it's a really different kind of slasher. It was independently made back in 2000, so it was kind of forgotten about, but it was very much like we talked about with Bride of Chucky, how you could see they took stuff from Scream. This one is very similar, where you could see the kind of beats that they were going for, and that how Scream influenced movies for like 10, 15 years when it came to these type of films. So I do recommend it if you get a chance.
Seed.
Huh?
Bringing it back to Bride and Seed. One.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Valentine, another early 2000s slasher. That's more straightforward. It is. What I do like about it, though, is it is a movie that, like, all the female characters are strong female characters. So it doesn't have, like, most of them don't put up with the shit that the guys, like, you have that random guy who comes up like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, get the fuck out of here. So they, that kind of stuff. I'm gonna have to do some beeping on this episode way too, because I just swore. We usually don't swear as much as we do in real life. Then I watched The Lie. That's a new Amazon one with Peter Sarsgaard, Muriel Enos, and Joey King. Awful, just awful.
Okay,
awful.
wait, right now. If you had to rewatch that or Hubie Halloween, which one would you choose?
Hubie Halloween, hands down. Hubie Halloween. I know, hands down. Wow. Not even a thought, because The Lie was terrible. I'm gonna spoil it just so you guys, because you're not gonna watch it. Don't watch it.
No.
Say it's this movie, all right? They, father and daughter, are going to some ballet competition school thing. I don't know, whatever. They see her best friend on the side of the road waiting for a bus. They pick her up. They're like, hey, come with, because they're going to the same place. Just come with us. So they go out, and her and the friend got to use the bathroom. There's no bathroom. So they're going out like in the woods somewhere. You hear her scream. The dad runs. It's only the daughter there. The best friend's gone. And they're like, what's... He's like, oh my God, she fell. And then she's like, no, I pushed her. And he's like, oh my God. So what do you do in that situation? You're a parent. You got to protect your child, right? So he leaves. They make sure no one sees them. They get out of there. She eventually ends up telling the mother. The mother freaks out. So at some point, they actually cut back to... This is important. They cut back to the snow. And we see a dead body just lying there. You're like, oh my God, so she's dead. That's, she died. Okay. So then the parents go crazy. They're like trying to the dad's trying to find his daughter. They're trying to fend him off because they don't want their daughter to go to jail. They end up killing him. The mom ends up running him over, the dad. Okay. They kill him. They're getting rid of him. They're trying to clean their car off of the blood in the garage. And then who walks in? The girl that's supposed to be dead. She's not dead. She's still alive. And you're like, wait, what? So, and they're like, wait, you're still alive? And so they're cleaning off the blood from her dad on their car. So then they go inside, she leaves. They go inside and they're like, the daughter's like, I'm sorry. She thought it would be funny. She went to stay with her boyfriend. And I'm like, so then they hug and you hear the cops, the sirens are coming because the dad's dead. And I'm like, wait, what? How does this movie even work? There's no, because I told you, they showed a body. There was no one looking at that body. They just showed the viewer the body. So why did they show us a body of a person who wasn't dead? And then expect us to go oh, it was a hoax. Was she just pretending to lay in the snow dead? Is that I think what they tried to do is they tried to trick the viewer and be like, oh no, she's dead. And then so when that twist happens, you're like, huh? What? But it's so dumb. I was like, you're requiring us to believe all this time that she had just been playing around, and it made no sense whatsoever. It was sat on the shelf for 2 years at Blumhouse. Now I know why. It's not even a horror film, but it was released as part of their 4 or 8 movie horror releases that they're doing with Amazon Prime. There are 2 this week, 2 next week, and then 4 next year, early next year. And I heard the second one they released this week was actually pretty good. But this one, I started with this one because my wife likes Joey King because she's in The Conjuring, and we like those stupid kissing booth movies that she does. So we were fans. I'm like, oh, this will be fun. My wife fell asleep 30 minutes in. So I was like, I could have stopped watching. But it was I'm like, nope. Because the thing is, I'm working now. So my time is limited because when I go to bed earlier now, because I get up at 4:50 in the morning. So I'm going to bed earlier. So when I was halfway through, I'm like, I can't start another movie. I'm going to fall asleep. So I had to finish it. And it had to count, even though it wasn't a horror film. But it was just so awful. It was so.
But your experience was horrifying.
Yes, it was. It was very horrifying. It was. Yeah. I was I don't watch a lot of movies that I don't like, and you guys probably know that. Just working with me, I talk about a lot of movies. I like a lot of movies, and like I said, Rylie, Wayne and I, every movie we reviewed for the most part, we've enjoyed. So, I couldn't fathom how this movie even got made in the first place. And I almost wonder is if they took that ending and they're like, we need a twist ending, and they just tacked it on, and that's kind of what it felt like. So
what a wacky prediction.
It was so bizarre. And I like Peter Sarsgaard a lot. Peter Sarsgaard is a really good actor, but You could just, and it was a torture to kind of like see him try to like make sense of the movie, like as he's acting. You're just like, oh man, feel for you, man. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, I rewatched Hell Baby recently. Most people don't like this movie. I like this movie. And I watched The Raven too. That was the 10th one I watched. I talked about that already, so obviously. But Hell Baby is a movie. It's a spoof movie from Thomas Lennon and Ben Grant, who are the Reno 911 guys, and I like it so much because they play two arrogant Italian priests who specialize in exorcisms, and they're hilarious. And like that's my favorite part of the movie is they're just, I don't know, it's just so random. It's not really a good movie, I would say, but I thought it was funny. So I did watch that one also recently. In the middle of watching Supernatural, Ratched. I got to start Haunting of Bly Manor still. That just came out Friday. I'm really looking forward to that because I loved the first season. But yeah, so that's what I'm watching, Wayne. What you got?
I'm continuing to rewatch Sons of Anarchy.
Nice.
Underrated show. I think it's up there with the writing and whatnot. I don't know if because it aired on FX, it was held back some, but I definitely don't think it gets enough credit. But, you know, I'm not going to put it up there with, like, Sopranos and Breaking Bad, but it's definitely second tier.
Yeah.
It may even be in the top 10 for me, or definitely is in the top 10 of TV series of all time that I enjoy. So
I gotcha.
Yep. We started watching Sherlock. Of course, I'm completely blanking on the gentleman's name.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Thank you. I was going to say Doctor Strange in the Marvel movies. Again, Miranda's a big fan, so we're doing that.
Cool.
We're still working our way through Cursed as well.
How is that one?
It's good, but it slows down in the middle, so we're kind of trying to power through that. For those of you that don't know, my wife Miranda is not big into movies and TV. If it's not NCIS cop dramas, that is. So we take it in baby steps. So that's what we're working on right now. I just literally, as we were going through IMDb and researching and looking up casts and stuff, found out that Glow has been canceled. It's not coming back. I am very upset and devastated because I really loved that series and I was looking forward to season 4.
Yeah, a lot of it's having to do with, I think, the fact that that's a show where they got to get very close with each other.
Yeah, COVID.
Yep, so it's
very
unfortunate.
Sad,
I was very
sad to
disappointed
hear
in that as well, yeah.
Also, Teenage Bounty Hunters is not getting a
I know. I was gonna bring those up in the news and notes, but yeah, those are that's okay.
Jumping ahead.
That's all right.
It's really what I'm working on right now, working my way through.
All right, Rylie, you got anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I wrote down a list of my top 5 favorite movies that I can recommend. I haven't seen any of them super recently, but
sure, go ahead.
Good.
Go for it.
Brazil, Perfect Blue, which is a Satoshi Kon movie. It's amazing. Scream, which we've talked about.
Yes.
The Lighthouse, which was really recent, and Gothic by Ken Russell.
God, I haven't seen that one. I have seen Lighthouse. Lighthouse is very good, but very Wayne, I would not recommend watching Lighthouse because you'll hate it.
I thought you said The Lake House at first. I love Keanu Reeves.
Yep, Keanu Reeves is fantastic in that. Scream, Wayne and I, we talked about that briefly because that was, our first episode was like movies to get to know us by, and that was one of my favorite movies of all time.
I loved it.
It's so good. It's so perfect. Like,
yeah.
Just from the opening to the end, the cast is fantastic. The writing is great. I love the whole franchise. I know some people, it doesn't, they don't like all of them. I like all of them, even the third one, which is a little bit, the third one is similar to what we were talking about with Curse of Chucky, where they like take a huge like leap of like, sure, the fans will come along on this, son of the woman who was killed in the beginning before the first movie and is now the brother of the main killer. Like, it was just so like, whoa, wait, what? But
yeah, I don't like the rest of the franchise because I like the first one so much, and so just watching any of them, I'm like, I wish I was watching the first one. So that's why I don't like the franchise. If they were totally separate from the first one, then I would probably just enjoy them as silly, fun slasher flicks.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get into the news and notes section. That's where I just talk about things that are coming out, and there's Wayne talked about cancellation of Glow, which him and I were huge fans of, and also Teenage Bounty Hunters, which I liked as a show I just watched that just came out. That one I don't know if it was a COVID thing, but they canceled it anyway. They are moving a bunch of movies back. Dune was moved back till October of next year. Jurassic World was pushed back to 2022. They did announce, we just talked about Don't Breathe, they did announce a Don't Breathe sequel coming in 2021, starring Stephen Lang. No word on whether Jane Levy's coming back. Movies coming out soon. Selena series hits Netflix in December, starring Christian Serratos, who plays Rosita on The Walking Dead. Exhumed, A History of Zombies hits PBS on October 30th. That seemed interesting. They're going to talk about zombie movies, but also kind of where the myths come from reality. So I was kind of interested in that. Fat Man, gritty Santa Claus movie starring Mel Gibson and Walton Goggins. Theaters November 13th, VOD November 17th. I watched that trailer. I was like, I don't know about this movie, but it looks interesting enough to watch it at least. It's basically a two-man movie. Walt Goggins is hired to assassinate Santa Claus by some rich kid who got coal one year. And Santa is like now very like disgruntled and has a full, like, not like a regular Santa beard, but like a I'm over this shit beard. And ends up like, I think one of the lines from the trailer was like, Walt Goggins is like, I was hired to kill you. He's like, get in line. So I don't know. It could be fun. It could be really stupid. We'll see. Definitely didn't expect to see a trailer for that kind of movie. I was like, wait, what? And then the other big thing I have is Disney Pixar Soul. This is big news for that. Is skipping theaters and hitting Disney Plus on Christmas. It's not going to be the $30 that it was to watch Mulan, so it'll be free if you're interested in Disney Pixar movies, which I am. And Soul looked very sad, so I'm sure I'll watch it and cry my eyes out. Rylie, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We hope to have you back sometime just to talk movies, because that's what we love doing.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for another great week. It's been fun, and we will be back next week, and we're going to talk about, and I haven't told Wayne this yet, but I'm sure he could probably see it was coming. We're going to talk about my favorite franchise, and that's the Halloween
My
franchise.
Little Pony?
No, Wayne, that's after Halloween.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the Halloween franchise, which is my favorite franchise, and so we'll go on that next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a great week.